Okay, so for this session then, we're going to be looking at the other types of questions that commonly appear on the reading exam. So there's a lot of skills that will be embedded in here, which will be useful for the writing exam as well. But mainly these are looking at the ideas of what pops up on the reading exam. So we've looked at our language features, our organizational features, facts and opinions, formal and informal language, and we're going to get questions on all of these. And again, the structure of the reading paper is always the same. But what we need to look at now is what other types of questions are going to pop up and how can we be a bit more prepared for them? So first of all, we're going to have a little bit of a talk about writing styles and what this looks like in the exam. Then we're going to have a look at a rephrasing of a sentence and how this pops up and how this appears in the exam as well. A little bit of practice on this. We're then going to have a look at the inferred meaning within the context. Now, this one can be a little bit more difficult because the context itself isn't actually featured in the PowerPoint at the moment. I think I will add that at a later point. But it can be more difficult to actually work out what is meant or what is being said if we don't have the full picture here. So do bear in mind that these ones might be a little bit more difficult based on that. We're then going to have a look at the compare and contrast text questions. So these are the big questions. There's always one of them. For level 1 learners, I believe it's 3 marks. For level 2 learners, it is always a 6-mark question. Once we know the formula and we know what to look for, these are incredibly simple. So provided we can find the information that we require, we can easily pick up these marks. But it's just knowing a very good structure of how to answer these questions. So for all of these topics, we're going to look at what they look like in the exams. And then in regards to our homework, that is going to be obviously the Google Classroom assessment that we have attached to this unit. Okay, so text can come in a lot of different forms and they will be written in different styles to serve certain purposes. So again, this is really when we're looking at our actual writing assessment, this is what we need to factor in. You know, we might be writing a letter, so it could be to apply for a job or it could be to a friend. And again, that will change the tone. So that will determine if it's informal or formal. But it's the fact that the structure will be a letter, which is important there, because we will have to use that structure when we are doing our writing task, which we will look at in a later presentation. It might be an email, which again could be to a friend or a boss, and that could determine if it's formal or informal. It could be a leaflet, which could be, I know, maybe about a cultural trip, for instance. It could be a form. So if you're registering to or registering with the dentist or something like this, a brochure, a holiday brochure, or like an information kind of leaflet, information kind of pamphlet there, or it could be an article. It could, of course, be a notice as well. For us in functional skills, what we tend to find for our reading assessments, when we're reading, it tends to be from like a leaflet, an article, maybe a brochure, something like this. So with our reading kind of information, it tends to be from these kinds of areas. When we're looking at our writing assessment, then we tend to be looking at letters, emails, and articles. These are the things that we construct ourselves. But just to make you aware that we can see writing in a lot of different kind of styles and a lot of different forms, and they all serve certain purposes. You know, I wouldn't write a letter if I was, trying to register with the dentist, for instance. If there's a form to fill out, that's going to be a lot easier than writing a formal letter with all the information in there anyway. So we've got all these different kind of texts and they can come in a lot of different forms. What we might be asked to do is to look into this and kind of explain, well, what's the point of the text? What is it actually trying to do? And it is worth remembering that although sometimes, the information is there, so we know that you're writing a letter to your MP, but it's why are you writing it and what are you trying to do with that letter, for instance. So as a couple of examples, it could be that we are writing to describe something. So to describe, for instance, how chocolate is made. So the purpose of us writing is to describe something. It could be to persuade, and this is quite a common one. So, if we want, in this case, as an example, there to persuade the reader to buy a chocolate bar. But for our writing tasks, we tend to see this quite a lot. Write to persuade people to join your group or whatever it might be. It could be to instruct, tell people how to make the chocolate cake, to explain something, to give information, essentially. So to explain why chocolate lifts your mood, so a bit more of a scientific one there. To inform, which is very similar to explain there. So to inform readers about a new type of chocolate. To argue, so to fight your cause or to you know, um, kind of distance yourself from another point potentially. To advise or to review. Now, for us, we could be asked any of these. So we could be given a piece that is very informative, and we could be reading through that. We could be given something that gives us a lot of instructions, something that is an overall review. So it's just knowing that there is a lot of different reasons and a lot of different points to a text. The more common ones here tend to be to persuade, so people writing to try and kind of like persuade people. To inform is also a very, very common one. Maybe to review as well, but these two tend to be the most common here. So what does this look like in regards to the exam then? So in the actual exam question, we're going to see a question like this. So what is the main purpose of text A? So is it to, and again, you can already see all of the words that we've just been looking at really. So is it to describe the town centre? Is it to persuade you to buy furniture? To advise of a room to rent? Or to tell you about local shops? So what we'd have to do is just pretty much, once we've read through text A, we'd have a bit of a recap there, look over our piece and kind of determine from there and just go, oh, you know what? It is actually going to be it's a more descriptive kind of piece. So that's what I'm going to go. Again, process of elimination works very, very well. So these two questions tend to come one after the other right at the beginning of the paper. And again, we've also got this, which word best describes the style of text A? Again, there might sometimes be language in there that we don't know. Do be aware that in the exam, you can have access to a dictionary. So you can use that dictionary if you wanted to look up the meaning of one of these words, not a problem. Is it disappointed? Is it admiring? Is it pessimistic? Is it reassuring? So these are what these questions look like. And most of the time, the actual tone or the idea is quite straightforward for us. But it's just to make you aware of what these are. So, moving on then, we've got our next type of question that pops up very frequently. And this is our kind of rephrase the sentence style question. So we may be asked to change a word in a sentence or rephrase a sentence so that it maintains its meaning. It's in these kind of questions that we essentially need to become a thesaurus. So again, a thesaurus is just obviously a book that gives us different words for the same meaning. So if I wanted another word for, I don't know, to look, I could have to gaze, to stare, something like this. Now, this one tends to kind of be a bit difficult for some people because normally when they give you the sentence itself, it's actually worded very, very well. So it's quite difficult to think of almost like a a lesser way of wording it or wording it in a way that isn't as good. But again, we'll look at some examples and you might spot this. So in the exam then, we're going to see something that looks like this. So we can use a dictionary here. So if we are worried about what the word means, and it can be really useful because in this case here, where it says, a spacious double room, if we look in the dictionary and look at spacious, it will probably describe it using another word, which means the same thing or means similar. So can use a dictionary, can be very, very useful there. So we've got, first of all, a spacious double room. Give one word or phrase to replace spacious that keeps the meaning of this quotation the same. So you can just change the word spacious or you can change the structure of the sentence. So what I want you to do, have a quick go, see how you do. And again, if you wanted to try number 2 as well, so we've got ideal for a student. These ones on their own are still quite useful. You can answer these without the context of the rest of the question. But have a go, see what you think there. So Monica, yeah, that's an absolutely great answer. Try and send it just over to me though as well. Might make it a little bit easier there. But yeah, that's absolutely spot on. That would be perfect as a substitution there. Monica, yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I couldn't really think of one that's better than that for number 2, to be honest. So let's have a bit of a look here then. So we're going so a spacious double room. So can we give a word or phrase to replace this so it keeps the meaning? So we could have a large double room. That could be absolutely fine. Or you could kind of rephrase this as well if you wanted to. Peace, yeah, absolutely brilliant. Both of them will be absolutely fine. So they will, in regards to the mark scheme, they'll put a couple of words on here, but they will also say to accept similar as well. So you can, obviously, there will be a few in the mark scheme. So if you are looking at a mock paper at all, if the answer that you've put isn't in there, then don't worry, you will still get the mark if it means the same thing. But they'll just put a couple of examples in there because there's lots of different words and ways we could phrase it. But essentially, yeah, you've both got that one brilliant. So we could have a large double room, a spacious double room, a double room with excess space even will be absolutely fine there. And then for part B here then, so we've got perfect for a student, a suitable room for a student, something to this effect. Ideal for a student. Students would find this perfect. You know, you can always rephrase it if you need to as well, but normally it's easy to change that one word, substitute it out for something else. Okay, let's have a look at a couple more of these then. So we've got these ones here. So these ones are, again, they're all essentially from level 2 papers, but if we have a look at these ones, slightly more difficult words, but we can still work with them. And again, you would have a dictionary to hand as well. So if you are unsure of what the word means, feel free to use your phone to quickly have a Google and obviously check or use like a dictionary app if you have one to work from there. But have a go then. Let me know what you think. So a daunting prospect and I can still vividly remember. Monica, yeah. I'd probably go more with the second option that you've put there, to be honest. But either of them will probably get you the mark there. It's a little bit of a harder one to deal with. One thing I would say, I know you've just put both the answers over to me as 2 different ideas, and that's fine. Do bear in mind, obviously, in the actual exam, you can only put the one phrase across, which I'm sure you're aware of. But I just wanted to highlight it because I have had some learners before who have put 2 or 3 different ways of explaining it. And obviously, if one of them's right but one of them's wrong, then they can't actually give you the mark there. But yeah, that'll be absolutely fine. So have a go at the second one as well, see how you do, and then I'll wait and see.
I'm glad you mentioned that with the two different options. It's good, like sometimes you got obviously going both ways. That could be right and that could be right. So I'm glad you highlighted that. I didn't actually know that on this exam you can't give two different options. There's only one.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm really glad I mentioned it as well then in that
Yeah.
case. But yeah, it
Brilliant.
is. Obviously, if you put two things and they're both right, then they'll probably mark it as right. But then you've got that increased probability that one of them could be a little bit off, and they might mark it down because of that. So,
So sorry, the question is, even if the two answers will be right, they might score 0 just because you were not giving the one answer.
it's a tough one. Most of the time, I would say no. If you've put two answers and they're both correct, then they will. With the mark scheme, they are always. It's kind of written in there that they are marking to award, not marking to penalise. So if you've written two answers in there, and they're both correct, then they'll probably give you the mark. It does depend on the examiner, though. They might look at it and go, "Well, you should have only put one answer," but it doesn't say very specifically in here to only give one answer. So I think most of the time you would be safe, but it's better just to put, if you have two ideas, write them both down. Think, what one do I prefer? What one do I definitely think, or what one's more likely to get me the marks, and just go with that one. Peace, yeah, those are both absolutely spot on there. That's brilliant. Okay, so let's have a bit of a look here then. So for daunting prospect, and again, I've just put two kind of ideas here. There are various different ones as well. But this could be an intimidating prospect, a scary prospect. You could kind of delve a little bit more into, you could have like a difficult prospect, because again, it's the idea of like daunting. It could be because of its difficulty, so that would also be a mark there. I can still vividly remember. So this is going to be the idea of, I still clearly remember. I can still distinctively remember. I very clearly remember. Something to this kind of impact. Okay, and again, like I said, sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult if we don't have the actual context of the full text. But again, in the exam, we would have the full text to refer to if we wanted to. This is to show us what these look like in general. Okay, so there's just another one or two of these to kind of have a bit of a look at then. So here we've got another example here. I believe these two here were from a level 1 paper. So a theme park is a park with various rides. So can we give one word or phrase to replace the word various so that it keeps the meaning of the quotation the same? So essentially, although it sounds a bit formal there, we are just changing the word various to something that means the same. So we are just acting like a thesaurus. Same for B there. So a maximum speed of 150. Can you think of a different way of wording that, or a different way? Can you essentially rephrase it as well? So have a go, and I'll check the answers in just a second. Um, so Monica, yeah. So theme park, yeah, that would work for number one. It's an interesting one for B. I've never thought of it like that, but I think you would get the mark there, because it does kind of maintain what that means in the sentence. But I'd maybe try and think of something in regards to it being like an increased amount, that kind of idea, or being a high quantity, if that makes sense. But I think you will get the mark there. Peace, yeah, that's absolutely fine for question one there. So I'll start going through that one, and then let me know if you've got an answer for number two as well. So for question one, again, a few variations here. You could have had, a theme park with multiple rides, with lots of rides, with a selection of rides, something to that effect there. Question 2 then, so we've got a maximum speed of 150. So this is where it is difficult, because when you look at that and you just think, well, actually, that's perfectly worded. Why would I reword that? You know what I mean? It would make more sense if they give you a, like, if they gave you an example that used slightly different wording or less common wording, if that makes sense. But unfortunately, this is what we have to deal with. So piece, that's absolutely brilliant there for number 2. So a maximum speed of 150, we could have a top speed of 150, a highest speed of 150, greatest speed. So all of these are implying the top, or the like the number 1, essentially. So if we ever see est, it is always biggest, strongest, greatest, fastest. Whenever it's est on the end, it is always the top one there out of a selection. Okay, cool. So here's a couple more of these, and it is worth practicing these, just because, again, the more you get used to it, practice makes permanent. So have a go at these 2 as well then. So we've got a good CV is essential. Okay, so we're looking for a different word for essential there. And again, you can use a dictionary, do remember that. So format your CV into small sections. The best way of looking at these is just think about the word and just think, well, what does it mean? If you were to write a description for that word, essentially put that description into the question. So again, have a quick go and see how we do with this. Piece, yeah, that's absolutely spot on for number 1. I think that could work there. Yeah, Monica, yeah, I like that as well. It's kind of like a bit more informal, a bit of like a slang kind of term, but it is definitely, that will definitely get you the mark there. And again, it's nice as well, because I've not really thought of that as an idea. So for question 1 then, the answers that I came up with here is, a CV is crucial. A CV, a good CV is required. A high quality CV is paramount. But I think your guys' kind of answers here are actually, in some ways, a little bit better. So, piece, yours is, a good CV is important. Yeah, definitely
Can I have
works.
a question?
Yeah, of course, of
This
course.
question has to be formal language, because as you just mentioned it, of the language format. Answering this.
No, it doesn't have to be formal or informal. So long as it maintains the meaning, you'll be absolutely fine. So, so in regards to that's Monica, isn't it? Was that?
Yes, it was me
Yeah,
asking.
yeah. Sorry, just checking. But yeah, so your answer would work. Although it does sound, so a good CV is key. It does. Everyone knows it's that phrase in itself, key. Although it obviously means something else, it's kind of like its own one-word kind of idiom in some ways. But it would be absolutely fine. People know what the meaning is, and again, the examiners are there to mark and award marks for correct work. They're not there to go, no, these are the only 3 answers we're going to take. So you definitely get the mark there. But really good question in regards to the informal or formal. For these questions here, it doesn't matter about the tone, so long as the explanation, so long as you can read the sentence and it keeps its meaning. So you could switch the whole thing to being very informal or formal dependent. So piece, yeah, that's really good. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So format your CV into small sections. You could have, for these, you could have parts, which is what Monica's gone with there, and that's what I've gone with as well. For the first one, components could work as well. Put your CV into digestible chunks. So that's an idea there, Monica, where I've kind of converted it into a more informal kind of language there. But piece, your idea there of segments would also work. That would be absolutely fine. So again, there will be 3 or 4 of these on the mark scheme written down, but then it will say accept other answers. So if you are doing a mock paper and you're practicing these skills, then do be aware. And what I can say is that you'll always mark yourself a lot harsher when you're marking your own exams than anyone else will. Okay. So you may be asked to infer the meaning of a sentence within its context. So it's important to remember that it is based on the context and to try and link this if possible, although it's not always necessary. These questions are very, very similar to our kind of thesaurus type questions, but they tend to use kind of idioms and colloquialisms that are sometimes a bit more difficult to understand out of context. So if we have a bit of a look at one of these, and again, these are a bit easier when they have the sentence behind them as well. So something like this then. So explain what each of these quotes from text B means. So here we've got, rent in advance. So what you want to do, although you can probably take the meaning from that and you can probably go, okay, rent in advance means this. It will probably be easier if you see that in the context and say it says, so where John is currently living, they always ask for the rent in advance. You can then just kind of get a bit more information from the structure of the sentence. You can then also link your answer to that context as well. So you could say, in regards to rent in advance, John will pay the rent up front. So you link it specifically to John. So have a quick go and see if you can come up with kind of basically just explaining what these things could mean. And this is, again, you can see how it's very similar to our kind of thesaurus style questions. But again, a little bit more difficulty there. Using the context definitely helps. Yeah, Monica, that could work. I'd say slightly better wording would be up front. But again, it does mean the same thing. You will still get the mark for it. And yeah, for the second one as well, yeah, so it is essentially that. Again, I think with the word costs being in there, you might want to think about it's extra amount of money being spent as well. So if it's the cost of something, it tends to be the price of it or how much you're going to have to pay, if that makes sense. But again, this is just me giving a bit of extra feedback for you, but the two answers that you've got there will be fine. Piece, yeah, that would work for number one there. So if I put up a couple of the ideas that I've had on here, so we could have paying the rent up front, so very, very similar to Monica's answer there. Paying the rent before you move in, maybe, depending on the context of how it's used. Or it could also be, linked in with the question. Like I said, if it was saying that, John always pays the rent in advance, you could say, explain what is meant by each of these quotations. Rent in advance, you could just say, John pays the rent early, something like that, and you will get the mark there. So for additional costs then, if we look at this one, we could have extra costs. Yeah, we've essentially. So for our additional costs, then we could say extra costs, or we could say costs on top of the rent, like bills. Either one of these will be fine. Potentially, you want to kind of explain it a little bit more. Extra costs is, in all fairness, you could add a little bit more in there. So additional costs, extra costs that may not have been considered, or extra costs on top of what you already pay. Things like this. Linking this one to the context will make it quite a bit easier there. So we've then got another example here then. So what does each of these quotations from text B suggest about driving? So these two examples are a little bit harder to explain clearly without the context. But chances are that you'll still be able to get the marks without linking it directly. But again, with these, having the direct link can make it a lot easier. Reading it in context can make it a bit easier. But have a bit of a go, see if you can work these ones out. And just remember, this is actually harder than it would be in the exam because normally you'd have the background context there as well. Peace, yeah, that's a really good way of wording it, to be honest. So if we have a look at this one, so hopefully you had a little bit of time to consider this. So stepping stone to adulthood. It could be, the first step from childhood or adolescence towards being a grown-up or something to this effect. I liked your answer there, piece of the idea of, becoming more independent. But again, when this is in the context, it does make it considerably more easier to kind of understand. When you read it in the sentence and you're essentially then explaining what is meant by it, you can link it to the text itself. So it does make it a bit simpler there. A status symbol then. So this is going to be like a possession that shows wealth. So again, what does each of these quotations suggest about driving? So in this case, we can say it's a status symbol is a possession that shows wealth. We can then link it directly with the text itself and say, having a car is considered a status symbol because it shows importance or it shows that you are able to drive, something to this effect. Okay. Oh, what's going on there? Okay, so our next type of question, so we've got the compare and contrast style questions. So these are the bigger style questions at the end then. So for level 1 learners, these tend to be 3 marks. For level 2 learners, they tend to be 6 marks. The actual, they don't really change very often. So just to make you aware of that. So they are easy enough to answer as it's just a case of pulling information from the text, but learners tend to struggle to get all the marks here. If we break the question down and have a set structure for answering, then we can guarantee a high percentage of the marks. They always ask these in the same way. So if we know exactly how to answer it, we will always get all 6 of the marks here. So like we said, a lot of the other questions, they tend to just be 1 marks, maybe 2 mark questions. The biggest questions that we have is our language feature questions for level 2 learners. Our language feature question, that will be 4 marks. Language feature, example, and this question here. So let's have a little bit of a look about what we might be asked then. So we may be asked to say how texts are similar or how they differ. We may be asked to compare the texts in order to answer a specific question. So this is often worded as a compare or contrast. So when we compare something, it's finding similarities. When we contrast, it's finding the differences. You don't see many of the differences questions, contrasting questions. There's not very many of them. The main example tends to be finding similarities. And again, it is always an asking about a specific question. So from example, it tends to be text A and text B both have similar ideas regarding driving. State what these are and quote your answer. We'll see it very clearly in a minute, but it's something to do with it. So it's, you know, text A and text C both give information about cheese graters. What do they have in common? So again, it's this kind of idea. Definitely do give relevant and precise ideas from the text. So we are looking at information from the text. That is the most important thing. Direct quotes are our lifeline here. So we want direct examples from the text. We do not want our own knowledge. And it is difficult sometimes because you might read something and go, well, obviously that's this, because everyone knows that. That's all well and good, but we don't want your own opinion. What we're being marked on is our ability to take the information from a given resource. So it might be that we know nothing about the topic, so that is why we're then looking into it. So a good way to answer these questions then, make it clear that you understand the question. This essentially starts off as like our introduction point, really. Explain the information in your own words. So give a bit of an explanation in your own words if you need to. Refer directly to each text using short quotes. So this is a very, very important one here. Be precise. You know, you don't want to be vague in your answer at all. Make it clear which text you are writing about. Very, very important there. And distinguish between information, ideas, and opinions if you are required to do so. So all of these are great ideas. In regards to Edexcel, the exam board that we are currently using, it is mainly a case of make it clear what text you're writing about, make it clear you understand the question, and then refer directly with quotes. That is what we're really looking for. So just as an idea of what this might look like, or like a very good answer of this. So what we've got here is a question here saying, so explain how these texts have similar ideas about the environment. So from that list that we just had, let's have a quick look then. First of all, just starting by acknowledging that you know the question. Tell the examiner you understand the question by repeating it. One way that these texts are similar. Brilliant. So we know we're looking for a similarity and we're telling you that we know that. What we're going to do is state our first point. So here it says, so one way to that these texts are similar is that they all try to encourage the reader to take care of the environment. Brilliant. So that is our first similarity. Then we need to evidence it. And as we can see here, we've got a short quote that refers directly to the document. Everyone has a duty to look after the planet. We must do more. We can save the planet. Show the examiner that you know what text you're talking about. So that is, again, highlighted there. Document A says, direct quote, perfect. Document B says, direct quote. For some examples, document C says, and direct quote. You can paraphrase as well as use direct quotes. I would suggest for the example that we're using, just do direct quotes. It's a lot easier. Just to find the exact quote that you need, copy and paste it. Another example here, you know, you are considering becoming more eco-friendly. Which text is most likely to persuade you? So again, with this kind of idea, we've got acknowledging the question straight away. You know, text 8 is more likely to persuade me because, and here is my first reason. Then we've got straight away our quotes or paraphrasing. Better to use quotes though, directly from the document. So we can see that they are, we've referenced the documents and we've referenced the actual quotes there as well. Finally, then, there's another example there of how you could use paraphrasing to answer, but you don't necessarily have to. So what do these look like in the exam for us then? For level 1 learners, this is what your exam question will look like. And it always tends to be question 15 every single time. So compare text B and text C to give advice about what to check when you visit new accommodation. In your answer, you should give one piece of advice about what to check for when you visit new accommodation that is the same in text B and text C. Give one quotation from text B and one from text C to support this. So all we're going to do though, text A, get out of the way there. Well, I'm looking at text B and text C. It's already told me that they both give advice. So give one piece of advice about what to check when you visit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read through text B and I'm just going to get my highlighter. Right, that's saying to check the plumbing. Then it's saying, make sure to check the locks, maybe. In text C, I can then look down. Oh, this one says about checking the locks as well. That's 3 marks. The advice is that they advise you to check the locks. Quotation from text B, put the direct quote in. From text C, put the direct quote in. Really nice and easy to get those 3 marks. It's very, very similar for level 2. It's just we have a bit less structure given to us. But we can see it's very much the same. So here we've got compare similar ideas from text A and text C about how to pass your driving test. In your answer, you should give 2 similarities about these texts and how to pass your driving test. Give 1 quotation from text A and 1 quotation from text C to support each similarity. Now, we are not being marked on our kind of writing styles, our grammar, paragraph use of complex sentences, anything like this. We're not being marked on that. So let's make it as simple and straightforward as possible. First of all, I've got compare similar ideas from text A and text C about how to pass your driving test. Right. So I'm looking at text A and text C. What is similar about the ideas that they have? It might be that the idea is, practicing more is going to help you pass. The other one might be, be careful about being nervous. So to structure this question, and this is the structure we want to use every single time, we start off, both texts are similar in regards to our first point. So both texts are similar in regards to, they both say that doing extra lessons is a good idea. Text A states that, and then we put our direct quote. Text B states that, and we put our direct quote. Obviously here it's text A and text C. Both texts also share a common view regarding, and then we put our second point. So both texts also share a common view regarding keeping your nerves under control. Text A states that, direct quote. Text B states, direct quote. So what we can see here is I'm going to get 1 mark here for the similarity, and then once I put in my 2 quotes, that is 3 marks in total. The same for this part here. It is a very easy and nice way to get 6 marks there, and we've got a lot of time to actually go through and answer these. Do bear in mind when you are going through your reading exam, something that is very useful to do is just remember the actual structure. So we get asked, questions about text A at the beginning, then about text B, then text C, and then comparison questions. So all we have to do is read the first text and then answer the first questions. As soon as it starts talking about text B, read text B, answer those questions. Text C, answer those questions. And then we've got our 1 or 2 comparative questions that might take a little bit longer there. What I'd recommend is when you are reading through the text as well, use a highlighter. If you're going through the text, any language feature that you see, if you see a question mark, an exclamation mark, a direct quote, a statistic, anything like this, just quickly highlight it. It just means that when we get that language feature question and we know it's going to pop up, we can immediately go, text B, I've already highlighted them, and you can just pull them straight out. It saves you a lot of time there. Okay, so a little bit of a review then. So we've got another one of these just to practice quickly. So you can use a dictionary to answer your question. Showcase yourself to potential employers. So what word or phrase can we change here? So it keeps the meaning the same. We're going to change the word potential. And then in our next one, we have remuneration is usually quite generous. So again, there's another question there. And again, it is a bit of a strange word. You might have to do a quick Google on what remuneration means. It's a very difficult one to pronounce, in all fairness. Remuneration. But have a go. Let me know what you think. And again, you can use your phone to do a quick Google as to what this word means as well. That's absolutely fine, because you would have a dictionary with you. Okay, so if we have a bit of a look here then. So potential answers that we could have here. We could have future, so showcase yourself to future employers. We could have showcase yourself to other employers. So something to this effect. Down here then, so different words for remuneration. We could have the pay is usually quite generous. Your earnings are usually quite generous. So again, there are a couple more examples here. I'm going to just pop up some answers for these ones, and then I can show you where the assessment is on the classroom. So in this case here, it is a lot easier when you read this in context. It's talking about the chocolate of the future, and it says here about it being a pale imitation. So it could be a different coloured version. You know, imitation meaning kind of like the same, but less effective, less good in some regards. A substitute that is not of the same standard, something like this. Eye-catching packaging, so packaging that draws the interest of passers-by, or interesting and different packaging to increase sales. But again, when it says there about what does this mean in regards to the writer's views of the chocolate of the future, then obviously you could say eye-catching packaging. The writer thinks that the packaging is something that helps promote sales. Something to this effect. Yeah, absolutely spot on. Yeah, Monica, that's a really good. Yeah, so eye-catching packaging. So drawing attention would be a really good extra way of wording that as well. So again, there's another kind of another couple of these ideas here. So we've got, you know, in text A, what do the following quotes suggest about the writer's attitude to making finds? So we've got to hit the jackpot. And this is what I mentioned earlier about these questions sometimes using idioms or cliches, quite colloquial language at times. So to hit the jackpot, obviously that is an idiom. We're not actually finding a pot called Jack and hitting it. But again, it's kind of stating, well, what does this mean? You know, what does it state about his attitude? So he feels that, you know, when he hit the jackpot, you know, he's got very lucky. He's won the best prize, something to that effect. Over the moon as well, you can see there it is. It's an idiom. It's gone so far now. It's a cliche. It is also an exclamation in this point. In this case, but you know, if you're over the moon, then you're very happy. You're ecstatic. You're very excited. Something to this effect. Okay, so what we've looked at here, then we've had a bit of a look at the writing styles, and we've looked at what type of questions pop up in regards to this. And we've had a look at our rephrasing the sentence style questions. Again, they are very common. These will always pop up. So it is used kind of practicing a few of them and getting used to what they're going to kind of ask in the exam there. The inferred meaning within the context then. So we've looked at these and they are very similar to our thesaurus style questions, the rephrasing questions. But again, you can put it in the context as well. So you can use what the person's actually saying about to aid you with your answer. Compare and contrast questions. So these are the big questions. The main thing is have a look at the example on there. That 6-mark question is the same structure every single time. I've never seen it say about differences, but it could do. So in general, it's an idea of looking there and just thinking, okay, they always say they have similar views about this. So how to answer it, text B and text C both agree that. First point. Text A says, text B says. Both texts also agree that, next point, text A says, text B says. There are 6 marks, there are 6 pieces of information there, 2 points and 4 quotes. Just try to remember that. And we've had a lot of experience here of looking at what these look like in the actual exam. Okay, so that is it for this kind of section on the other types of questions that will pop up. What I suggest doing now is actually moving forward, completing the assessment or the unit assessment in this topic, and then moving a step further and then completing your mock reading exam as well. So that is everything for this recording. So I'm just going to stop recording there.